Hi guys, it's Dylan from Bijou Diamond Jewellery in London again with another watch review, and today we're looking at the Rolex Submariner in steel, specifically the reference 116610LV, aka the Hulk. As with all my reviews, I like to go back in time and look at the history behind the watch and the different models, but I've already done that, so go check that out in my Submariner review. I'll look at some basic history behind the Hulk itself and a little bit of history behind the Submariner, but mostly I'll skip that out and save that for you to watch in the other video. So if we go back in time now to 1953, which is when Rolex released the Submariner, and then skip 50 years on to 2003, which is when they had their 50th anniversary for the Submariner, and Rolex released a special anniversary Submariner, which was reference 16610LV, which is now known as the Kermit, which featured a green bezel and a black dial. And then if we move on to 2008, Rolex released the Super Case for the Submariner, which was originally on the GMT, and then they carried it over to the Submariner line as well. And they released that larger case on the white gold and yellow gold first, and then the bimetal, and then the steel eventually in 2010. So this new super case featured slightly different crown guards, thicker, bigger lugs, and also a ceramic or cerachrome bezel. A couple years after they released those white gold and yellow gold ones to when they released the steel ones, one of the watches they released was this green dial one, and it featured also the green bezel, same as the Kermit. So due to the fact that it was a brand new, bigger case size and it was all green, it got nicknamed the Hulk because obviously it was big and green. The watch is still in production now, 8 years later in 2018. People all the time say that Rolex is going to discontinue the watch, but it's still in their catalogue now, so I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but I could be wrong. So that's a little bit of history behind the Hulk. Let's have a look at some of the features of this watch. So let's start with the clasp. The clasp is a glide lock clasp, which was something new that they released in 2010. And basically it features a clasp where the wearer can quickly and easily adjust the size of the bracelet, and it was originally intended for people to be able to wear this watch on a day-to-day basis due to its popularity, and then be able to wear it over a dive suit, which is obviously what it's designed for, being a Submariner. But in order to do that, you had to either use their Easy Link system or add and take out links, which was a bit cumbersome to have to do every single time you wanted to go diving. So this Easy Link allows people to quickly adjust the size of the watch, and I find it's really useful. I used to have this Submariner. I found it a really great feature. I used it almost on a daily basis, especially in summer when your wrist expands with the heat and then sometimes contracts during the colder times, maybe when you're inside. I found that all the time I was using the Easy Link system, and it just made the watch so much more comfortable for me to wear. The Easy Link clasps are much bigger than the normal Oyster clasps, and I don't really like that. I think it's a bit cumbersome when you're wearing it, especially as I have quite small wrists. This whole clasp took up pretty much the whole of the bottom of my wrist, and I found it was a bit of a scratch magnet because of that, because it was a big and clunky. It's also quite deep in comparison to something like a Day-Date clasp or a Patek clasp or an AP clasp. The bracelet is the Oyster bracelet. It's all brushed, and it's my favorite one from Rolex in the Oyster bracelet line, because I really do not like the center links being polished like on the Daytona, the Yachtmaster, or the other Submariners, or the GMT. I love this brushed effect. I think it's probably one of my favorite looking Rolexes there is because of this bracelet. I like the more subtle appearance of a brushed bracelet. I also like the refined look that brushed steel has. Again, it goes really well with the whole tool and utilitarian look of this watch, because obviously when you're diving, you don't want to have something super shiny glinting in your eye. It's a bit distracting. So it's nicer if it's brushed and doesn't look so much like a scratch magnet then, because those center links really do attract scratches when they're polished. Now moving on to the case, obviously this is the super case with the 1166 reference. I do really like the super case. I think I prefer it to the older case size as well. Just looks a bit more boxy, bulky and refined, very sharp edged. Yeah, I really like it. Complements the bracelet really nicely as well. Brush finish on the top of the case, on the lugs and part of the crown guards, and then we've got polished sides, and then most of the crown guards are polished as well. The bezel is a green bezel obviously, and it's ceramic, and the little numbers and markers for your dive time and also your decompression stops are platinum inlays, so basically they won't tarnish as easily over time. And that anti-tarnish ethos then moves over to the dial, which has white gold hands and white gold markers also to prevent tarnish. Again, featuring a really cool green look to match our bezel, and it's got this sort of CD effect going on, a bit like the Day and the Yachtmaster we looked at the other day, but not quite to the same level. It adds real depth and character to the watch. Yeah, I find it much more interesting to look at than the black dial. It also changes tone in different lights. It can look really dark, almost black, so like the Kermit in some light. And then if you get it in much brighter light, it looks really almost like a lime green. It's very cool. A feature that I miss on my watch now that I have a Daytona is the date window. I use that all the time when I had this Submariner. I think I took for granted how useful that feature was. Obviously features a trip lock crown, meaning that we can go to 300 meters dive depth. That concludes our features, but let's have a look at this versus the black dial version. So the black dial obviously features a black dial and black bezel, which is the original style for the Submariner, but I much prefer this green dial and that green combo. And Rolex charges a premium for this watch, actually £350 premium when you buy it at retail price. So the normal one is $6,250, whereas this one is $6,600. However, if you actually want to get hold of this watch from Rolex, you will probably struggle. They sometimes have lists, and sometimes nowadays they actually don't even bother with lists for people because the list is too long. If you did want to get one of these watches, you'd be looking at almost £10,000 versus the £6,000 retail. So you're paying £3,000 premium over the black dial if you actually want to get hold of this watch quickly. If you can get it from Rolex, then you're paying £350 premium over the black dial. Do I think it's worth £350 over the black dial? To me, yes, because I prefer the watch, but I don't think it's worth an extra $3 grand because it's the same watch internally. All the case, the bracelet, everything is exactly the same. The only difference is the color of the bezel and your dial. And I don't think that warrants £3,000, but people are willing to spend an extra $3 grand to get the Hulk. And I do think that it does look much better than the black dial, so I can understand it to an extent. A watch that this is often compared to is the BLNR, aka the Batman, which is the GMT Master with the blue bottom part of the bezel. I much prefer this Hulk over the BLNR. I don't think that the BLNR is worth that money at all, whereas I think this has a slight essence of being worth almost £10,000. That BLNR for me doesn't look as cool as this, doesn't look as unique as this. The only real change is half the bezel on that and a little bit of paint on one of the hands. And I don't think that warrants that massive price jump between the normal GMT and the BLNR. This one has also gone up more in value than the BLNR. To me, I think it's a much better looking watch, the Hulk versus the Batman. That is the great thing about these watches, is they just keep going up in value, same as the Steel Daytona. They're just brilliant watches. You can wear them every single day. This person that owns this one wears it every day, and it's a bit of, it's a tall watch. You can really batter them around within reason, and they still look great because of the ceramic bezel, and then you can polish it up really easily as well because it's all brushed. And at the same time, while you're wearing it, it's going up in value every single year, and these really have climbed a lot in the last few years. Would I own this watch? 100%. This is one of my favorite dive watches, if not my favorite dive watch in the whole Swiss watch industry. I love the green dial. I love the Submariner anyway. That green dial adds a really unique essence, especially as it has that CD depth to it. I think it's probably one of the best everyday wearing watches. The only thing that holds me back about if I was to own one of them is the size of it. Now that I switched from the Submariner to a Daytona, the Daytona is much smaller, has nowhere near as big case and depth. I prefer smaller watches, so for me, when I try this on now, it just feels too big for me to wear now. I wouldn't probably own this watch, but if I was to go back to a Submariner, without doubt, this would be the one I'd get. Let us know in the comments what you like about this watch. Would you get the Hulk or the normal Submariner with the black dial, or maybe a precious metal Submariner? And let us know what other watches you'd like us to review.